Hello. Today's episode number 19 of the Professor Slots podcast discusses how I won a car at a casino. I'll go over what it's like to win a luxury automobile at a casino, including the questions to ask beforehand, assessment of the risks involved, as well as what can be done about those pesky income taxes. Plus, slot machine casino gambling in the great U.S. state of Iowa. Thank you for joining me for the Professor Slots podcast show. I'm John Friedel, and this is the podcast about slot machine casino gambling. It is where I provide knowledge, insights, and tools for helping you improve your slot machine gambling performance. Show notes are available within most podcast apps or at professorslots.com/E19.
John Friedel from the Professor Slots blog reveals all his tips and tricks for thriving in the casino environment. Choose winning slot machines and identify your gambling goals. Being entertained, earning comps, winning take-home cash, or combining them. John has won 90 taxable jackpots and a luxury car in 9 months of slot play and made a profit at slots gambling since 2013.
In case you missed it, on last week's show, I profiled Scientific Game Corporation, a leading developer of new technologies, products, services, and game content in the gaming, lottery, and interactive gaming industries. I also reviewed Indiana slot machine casino gambling. I hope you enjoyed listening to my last episode as much as I enjoyed making it for you. Remember to visit professorslots.com/subscribe to get my free report revealing the top 7 online resources for improving your gambling performance, including the one I've used as a top-tier slot machine casino gambler. Let's get started with the first segment of the show, How I Won a Car. On August 31st of 2014, at the end of an amazing 9 months in which I won 90 taxable jackpots playing slots, I won a car at a casino. This is the story of how I won that car. It is based on my notes and memories and was written only a few months after these events. However, the intent of this episode is not to brag about winning a luxury automobile at a casino, but rather everything I learned having done so. And I learned so much. Now in this episode, I'm sharing the many lessons I learned from this somewhat surreal experience. Call them advantage plays, if you will, or perhaps what's involved with having a winning perspective. In any case, I hope you enjoy listening to my story, and maybe even learn a thing or two about having a winning perspective at slots. This segment has the following 11 subsections. 1. An introduction. 2. Long promotion periods to accumulate entries. 3. Ignore car promotions at your cost. 4. Ask questions beforehand. 5. In the players' lounge during boring all-day events. 6. Round 2. Spinning a big wheel. 7. Being ready to win. 8. Remembered after having won. 9. Paying those pesky income taxes. 10. Learn to comfortably spin a wheel, just in case. And 11, a summary. And here we go. While at a local casino during the second year of my return to gambling, just over 3 years ago, I'd noticed a few posters on the big finale of a casino promotion I'd only been vaguely aware of. It was a multi-month promotion with several end-of-month giveaways, such as cruises and other trips, including a car giveaway as a finale at the end of the promotion. But being new to promotions at that time, as well as the need to pursue anything and everything of interest as another way to earn income for gambling profit, I had barely noticed a mail flyer, players' club emails, and other mentions of it during prior visits to the casino. My first assessment of this 3-month-long promotion was somewhat less than favorable. While cruises in international waters or trips to Las Vegas can indeed be wonderful, I had recently returned from another casino's complimentary gifts of a 7-day cruise to Alaska and a 4-night stay in Las Vegas, a typical annual rewards to a player with top-tier status. Therefore, I wasn't very thrilled with potentially winning another such trip or cruise so soon. To be more precise, I wasn't particularly interested in more trips, which this promotion seemed to be offering. I did become slightly interested in this promotion when I learned the grand finale was the drawing for the luxury car I'd noticed on display in the main entryway of the casino. Yes, I began to realize, that was very interesting indeed. I'd been puzzling over the Mercedes-Benz located in this casino's entryway for some time. I remembered seeing another such car there a few months back, but eventually it went away. Then I was still assessing that casino and hadn't yet played there much, so apparently hadn't been on the mailing list for that prior car giveaway. The second car I did see, and I wondered what event it went along with. Over several visits to the casino for mostly other reasons, I eventually learned more about the event. It was to be the grand finale drawing for the 3-month-long promotion for trips that I'd been hearing about, formerly assessed as not something I was interested in, then subsequently ignored. The luxury car on display was certainly a very fine automobile, but, as it happened, not at all the sort of vehicle I prefer. As a result, I had no idea how much it was worth. I took a photo of it one day so I could try to study its features. Perhaps online I'd find the same model car and get an idea of the features such a car model might typically offer. It was a simple matter to go online to the manufacturer's website to build a late model version of that brand and model car along with the vehicle features I could identify in the photo I'd taken. Doing so provided the retail purchase price of such a vehicle, which I felt was a good start on what I needed to know. For if I won such a car, hypothetically speaking, of course, wouldn't I rather want to know how much I might receive for this used car? As most people already know, many new cars depreciate a tremendous amount as soon as they are driven off the dealership's lot. This luxury car was no longer on the lot, and I had to assume should be considered as a used car with mileage of 10 miles or so. Therefore, I went online again to find out how much such a car would be worth used, with only a handful of miles on it. As a result, and strictly in a just-in-case scenario, I now knew the purchase price of that model vehicle, as well as what I, myself, might be able to get for it used. Over time, the 3-month-long promotion for trips, cruises, and finally a luxury car began to approach its end. Its last day was August 31st, 2014, the day of the big drawing for this car. I happened to be in the casino the night before, which was a Friday, when the casino had seemed rather lively. There were lots of people there, including the boss of all the hosts I'd been getting to know during my visits. I shook her hand, and she said she'd been hearing about me and was happy to finally meet me. So that was a nice little meet and greet. One of the hosts that I was getting to know during my many visits, Amanda, had taken that opportunity to introduce me to her boss, also asking if I'd be visiting the next day to participate in the car giveaway. With no real interest at that time, I lightly said maybe I'll stop by. That brief conversation stuck with me, however. Looking back, that was when I really started thinking about changing my assessment of the promotion. Why? Because Amanda happened to mention that the number of entries for each player was based on their play for the last few months. Also, there would be multiple opportunities to win, with 2 drawings each half hour over a 5-hour stretch. Finally, the other players called would be those that had plugged their Players Club card into a slot machine within the previous half hour. With those being the drawing rules that I knew about from Amanda, I had a few thoughts. First, I'd spent, and won too, a lot of money at that casino in the last few months. I began to realize that I seriously needed to reevaluate my assessment of this promotion. However, I immediately realized I had one question and one concern. The question was, given the significant amount of high-limit slots I'd been playing at that casino for the last 2 months, exactly how many entries did I actually have in the promotion for winning this car? And my concern was, would it be more trouble than it was worth to own another car, especially a specific model that wasn't particularly appealing to me? So I went to the casino the next afternoon, hours before the event itself, to ask my question and discuss resolving my concern with the casino hosts. All 3 hosts happened to be in their office, which was rare, and another clue that it was going to be a big day. Once I explained my question and concern, they told me that sliding my club card in the kiosk would provide the entries I'd have in the drawing. Plus, that instead of accepting the car, there was a cash option available if I chose to take that instead. I have to admit, I admire the professionalism of casino hosts, and especially of these particular casino hosts. I've noticed that hardly any question phases them. They usually come right back with an answer for even the most ridiculous questions, like mine can be at times. They either know the answer outright or know just where to quickly look it up. Armed with my prior research on the $36,000 sellable value of the car, the $40,000 amount of the cash option, and my 174 total entries, I left the casino for a while to think over the overall situation. It wasn't long before I turned my little $500 car around and went back to the casino well before the first drawing for the luxury automobile. Duh. Since I was so early, I brought a book to the high-tier players' lounge to wait for the first drawing at 5 p.m. Around 4:35 p.m. or so, I went out and plugged my rewards card into one of the main floor slot machines as required to be able to have my name drawn. At the 5 p.m. drawing, I realized that I couldn't hear announcements from within the lounge. When I went out onto the main floor, I saw the names of the two people that had already been drawn. With a bit of wandering around, I eventually found the location of the drawing itself, just as they were wrapping up the paperwork for whatever those two individuals had won. I noticed that each had won a small amount of cash, but not the car itself. Apparently, unbeknownst to me, despite my attempt at research, there was a secondary drawing of some sort after the initial names were announced. No one had won the car, just cash prizes between $500 and $1,500. On my way back to the lounge for more book reading, I made sure to plug my rewards card into another slot machine so that I was eligible for the next drawing at 5:30 p.m. Thinking about the situation in the high-tier lounge, while making little progress reading a book, around 5:25 p.m. or so, I decided that I needed to leave the lounge and head on over to the drawing location before the actual drawing of names. See, I had questions. What was actually happening? What might I learn by watching the actual process? In part, I wanted to learn the whole process from start to finish. In larger part, I had a thought that if two names are drawn, then whichever of the two individuals showed up first might automatically proceed with a secondary drawing. See, I was not at all sure if that was how it worked, but the order of who showed up first might be important. I thought I might end up being terribly disappointed with myself if I ended up being called first, but arrived after the other person, who might then win the car. That was not a pleasant scenario to imagine. There was only one car to win, after all. I would rather go first, despite the low odds of that being allowed if I was the second person called. I think now is a good time to mention that advantage players have a certain perspective on winning. It is not quite that they expect to win, but rather that they carefully consider scenarios where they take the best possible actions that can lead to a win. I didn't think I was going to win a car. If anything, I had my usual high hopes and low expectations, but I carefully looked at the situation and took precautions which might reasonably improve my odds of winning. And that is what advantage players do. They try to find the advantage. So, before the 5:30 p.m. drawing, I went up to the open area near, but not too near, the promotion organizers preparing for the next round on their laptop computer and getting set to draw the next two names. I remember that they glanced up at me with a look like they were wondering what I wanted, and my responding with body language where I was trying to be casual by turning and looking around rather than staring at them intensely, and the big spinning wheel set up next to them. Was that the second round? A minute or so later, they called my name. So, naturally enough, I went ahead and walked right on up to them. They asked if they could help me, perhaps a little suspiciously. Despite the apparent absurdity of it all, I just told them they had called my name. I can't imagine what they must have been thinking, but again, these were a highly professional group of people. They asked for my government-issued ID, confirmed my identity, then moved me over to the secondary round, It was indeed the spinning of a big wheel. Here's my description of it. The big wheel, perhaps 6 feet or 2 meters in diameter, had 15 locations around its outer edge, separated by long, thin posts sticking out along the rim. 2 of these openings between pins had little Mercedes-Benz stickers. The remaining 13 openings had written dollar amounts in them, ranging from $500 to $1,500. I saw all this at a glance, just before they told me to go ahead and spin the wheel. I asked, "Which way do you want me to spin it?" And they said, "Either way's fine." So I did. Now, we need to discuss the wheel because of its importance to what happened next. I know something about spinning wheels. I mean, professionally speaking, in terms of my area of expertise in my aerospace career. I've spun more than a few types and sizes of wheels, which I am more used to calling rotary turntables, over the prior 9 years during my 40-plus hour per week aerospace engineering day job. Those at work were all motorized, but I'd always need to adjust the rotational velocity and acceleration values on its spin as needed for the engineering development task at hand. As it happens, all the speeds and accelerations I use in my engineering career are within the range of what an individual can physically produce by hand. What I'm saying is, because of my career experience and training, I have an excellent feel for spinning a wheel. That ability was about to be put to an interesting test, trying to win a car. So they told me to spin the wheel, and carefully without worrying, and equally carefully without any thought other than to just relax, I grabbed one of the 6-inch posts sticking out of the edge of the vertical wheel and pulled it for what felt, in my professional opinion, to be just the right amount. So there I was, standing next to this very cute announcer, with nothing to do but watch the wheel slowly spin down as the 6-inch long whisker at the 12 o'clock position rapidly clicked over each of the posts sticking out near the wheel edge. Around and around the wheel turned, maybe 5 times altogether, each revolution going slower and slower. With what appeared to be about half a turn left, I could suddenly tell it was going to stop close to an opening with one of those 2 car logos. After a few more seconds, it was still moving somewhat slowly when the whisker dropped off a peg and into the opening with the Mercedes-Benz logo. The whisker hit the next post and started to bend as usual as it started to slide up the next post. If it went over, it would then drop into the next opening with a small cash prize, and definitely not a car logo. Up that next post, the long whisker continued to slide, with the wheel moving slower and slower due to the resistance, in part, from the whisker pressing and sliding on the post. With about 2 inches of whisker left before it dropped into the next opening, and with the wheel still moving slightly, the announcer looked at me and said in a disappointed voice, "Aw." Me? I wasn't going to be distracted by somebody else's opinion. I had my own. I kept my eye on that whisker. I watched as the whisker rode up on the post until there was only about 1/4 of an inch left before the wheel finally stopped turning. It had stopped before the end of the whisker was reached. Such was the force of the whisker on the post that the wheel then revolved backwards slightly, with the whisker now firmly and fully in the slot with the car logo. Nobody said anything for a moment. The surprise in the air was palpable. I thought about speaking up, but in all seriousness, I definitely wasn't going to be the first person to speak into that extreme silence. It must have been only a second or two, even though it felt longer, before the announcer, who had just said "aw" a moment ago, turned to me and said, "You've won a car," in a kind of a stunned voice. I looked at her and I said, "I know." That's when it all started to get really, really busy, really fast. At this point, several things happened in rapid succession. I have to admit, I didn't focus on much more than what was right in front of me. For instance, I have no idea what dollar amount, since the $500 and $1,500 prizes were all that was left on the wheel, that the second person, whose name was announced along with mine, might have won. I never so much as noticed who that person was. I was quickly moved off to the side by the organizers to fill out paperwork and be asked questions by the promotion organizer. I remember my handwriting being truly terrible when filling out the paperwork because my hands were shaking quite a lot due to the adrenaline coursing through me. I remember my handwriting being truly terrible when filling out the paperwork because my hands were shaking quite a lot due to the adrenaline coursing through me, I can only assume. I also remember two of my hosts from earlier in the day showing up very quickly. The very friendly Amanda said she'd been having dinner at the buffet when she heard my name being called and ran right on over. The very delightful and always knowledgeable Jill appeared a short time later, then stood by giving nice, quiet, comfortable support. They were the only people I knew there when I won the car. Before discussion of the payout method, the organizer asked if I'd like to have my picture taken, to which I replied that I couldn't agree to that given I was wearing a t-shirt with my employer's logo on it. They came back a few minutes later and offered to get me another shirt to wear, if that would help me to agree. Again, I respectfully declined. At the time, I wondered where they were going to get a shirt. Was one of the organizers going to go without? Later, I realized that they would probably have gotten it from the casino gift store. The point of all this is really an attempt to explain the intensity of the experience of winning a car or other expensive prize in a large promotion. To wit, much of the experience is rather surreal. It seemed like a barrage of somewhat relevant and somewhat non-relevant questions. I just tried to answer each to the best of my ability. Some, due to my prior research, I was prepared to answer correctly. The organizer's other questions, including if I would like the car itself, the cash award, or an equivalent in slot play. I answered, as I'd planned, that I would prefer to accept the cash option. I'm glad that I did plan my answer, as they tried to be very convincing that I might actually want the slot play instead. That would have been a terrible choice, given the winning strategy for that casino didn't require much bankroll. Accepting the slot play there would have ended up either being wasted or effectively unused when it eventually expired. I quietly yet firmly replied, again, that my preference was for the cash option. Once they seemed convinced of this, they then asked how I would like to receive it. Since they'd asked, I requested all of it in cash. However, to my surprise, that wasn't something that they were quite willing to do. Rather than press the issue, I suggested an alternative of 50% cashier's check and 50% cash, which they readily agreed to. Here's another gambling anecdote from that evening. While waiting for the cashier to bring the check and cash, Amanda offered to take my photo in front of the car in the lobby using my mobile phone camera. That's the photo you'll see in the artwork for this episode. After we did that, we talked for a while about various things. I remember she said that my winning the car couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. That might have been the nicest compliment I've ever gotten. But we also talked of my habits of wanting a cash payout. This is something I no longer do, by the way, unless I plan to spend it in a casino before leaving. Amanda and I talked about why I wanted to have the full award in cash. Honestly enough, I told her that I liked those little brown paper bands wrapped around $10,000 in $100 bills. She seemed puzzled and asked what possible use I might have for them. I told her in a straight-faced manner that I had been collecting them over the last 9 months or so with the intention of looping them together, once I had enough of them, to create a sort of arts and crafts string that I hoped to eventually wrap around my Christmas tree. For my efforts, I was pleasantly rewarded with quite an unrestrained belly laugh from my host friend. And along with her surprised laugh, she appeared quite speechless by the image I'd described. This conversation was nearly as enjoyable as winning the car. Once the cashier and manager brought my $20,000 check and $20,000 in 2 brown paper band bundles of $10,000 each, I requested a couple of security guards to walk me to my old beat-up $500 car before leaving the casino without spending any of the cash. Doing so was my third personal success of the night. The next weekend, I was attending an exclusive dinner at another casino located near the casino where I'd won the car. While waiting in line to be checked in for the free door prizes, I happened to mention to the people I was standing in line with, presumably gamblers themselves, that I just won a car the previous weekend. I was completely surprised when they proceeded to tell me my own name. Apparently, they'd arrived for the drawing later that previous evening to find that the car had already been given away. Their logic or assumption for arriving later in the evening than I was that no one would win the car until later in the evening, when at that point many logos would have been attached to the spinning wheel. Oh, and they didn't appear particularly happy with me for having won the car before they had a chance to. Others seemed genuinely happy for me, though. Be aware that winning a car, or taking the cash option for it, is not exactly the same as winning a taxable jackpot playing slots. The casino called it a promotional award, and no income taxes were taken out at the time of the win. Instead, as I was informed and eventually proved to be true, an IRS Form 1090 miscellaneous for the amount would be received after the beginning of the next year, to be used when having my annual income taxes prepared. Having to pay taxes at the end of the year for winning a car is strong motivation for most people to choose the cash option, as this provides the actual cash necessary to pay the associated income taxes. In fact, a lot more organizations would give away cars at their, say, charity events, but for the fact that the individual that wins cannot usually accept a cash option and now has a big tax burden with the car only. Also, be aware that an IRS Form 1090 miscellaneous can be applied very similarly as a W-2G to your annual income taxes. You can deduct your gambling losses up to your gambling winnings, whether or not they're the Form 1090 miscellaneous for winning a car, or the more usual Form W-2G for winning a slots jackpot. My first pro tip of the episode is this: learn to comfortably spin a wheel just in case. I recommend developing spinning a wheel as a skill. It is simple to learn, really. Perhaps build one to spin regularly. Get a feel for how it spins, the amount of push it takes to turn it. Also, make the resistance variable to get comfortable with how it feels to spin under a few different settings. Like when I won the car, spinning a wheel is occasionally a part of special events. If a player can get instinctively comfortable spinning the wheel enough to be able to get it to land on 1/2 or even 1/4 of the wheel they are trying to land on, the odds of landing in the opening of a specific prize during a casino wheel spin is 50% or 75% better odds, respectively. Obviously, that's a huge improvement to the odds of winning. A seriously excellent advantage play, unlikely to be achieved in simply any other way. In summary, on August 31st of 2014, at the end of an amazing 9 months of slot machine casino gambling, in which I won 90 taxable jackpots, each worth at least $1,200, I proceeded to win a car at a casino. This is the story of how I won that car, based on my detailed notes and memories, originally written down as presented to you only a few months afterwards. I've excerpted this story from a few pages of my 237-page self-published ebook, Learning to Win, currently available at professorslots.com/learningtowin, if you're interested. Be aware that this is a PDF formatted download, currently only available on my website. However, there has been interest of late in having a hard copy version, which is possible to do if I instead sell it on Amazon. So to meet the needs of my slots enthusiast audience, I'll likely shortly be moving Learning to Win over to Amazon. If, or rather when I do, I'll be sure to leave a link on where to find it on Amazon if you subsequently visit professorslots.com/learningtowin. In this episode, I have described to you a circa 2014 casino environment at which I have taken to call a newer style casino. The story explains how modern car giveaways are performed, or at least how they might be performed at a modern casino. My second pro tip tries to capture an important high-level perspective from all that I have shared regarding how I won a car. I hope you'll take away with you one specific thought. Be ready to win. Remember to visit professorslots.com/subscribe to get my free report revealing the top 7 online resources for improving your gambling performance, including the one I've used as a top-tier slot machine casino gambler. Show notes for this episode are now available within most podcast apps, but are also available on my website at professorslots.com/E19. Up next is the second segment of the show, Iowa Slot Machine Casino Gambling. In this episode segment, I provide a brief overview of the current state of gambling in a U.S. state, U.S. territory, or U.S. federal district, emphasizing by far anything of interest to slot machine casino gamblers. Each state-by-state episode segment can be expected to include an introduction, relevant legal statutes on gambling, if any, slot machine private ownership, state gaming commission, if any, gambling establishments, if any, and a summary. Here goes. In many ways, Iowa is at the forefront of the gambling industry with regards to legalized gaming, including Iowa slot machine casino gambling. It was the first state to legalize riverboat casinos in 1989, as well as having racinos, which, as I've discussed in past episodes, are pari-mutuel facilities including slot machines. Be aware that, for Iowa, racinos also include table games. Iowa currently has 22 casinos and pari-mutuel facilities, having a current total of 20,792 slots and gaming machines, as well as 457 table games. The largest casino in Iowa is Prairie Meadows Racetrack and Casino, the first pari-mutuel in the U.S. to introduce slot machines, currently having 2,000 gaming machines and 44 table games. Most of these 2,000 slot machines at Prairie Meadows are commonly known as penny slots, which, as you probably know well, are slot machines having a 1 penny denomination and usually more than 200 maximum credits. Often, penny slots have quite a few more than 200 maximum credits. Players must be at least 21 years of age to gamble in Iowa casinos. Casinos are open 24 hours per day. All gambling was originally prohibited in Iowa from statehood in 1846 through 1972, when the Iowa Constitution was changed to allow for games of chance such as bingo and raffles. Later, pari-mutuel wagering was allowed in 1983, quickly followed by the state lottery in 1985. In 1989, excursion boat gambling was authorized, making Iowa the first U.S. state to legalize riverboat gambling. Boats began operation in 1991. In 2004, the state legislature removed the boat requirement, allowing them to be permanently moored barges in man-made water basins. In 1992, state tribal compacts were negotiated with 3 American Indian tribes. It is important to note that the Commission has no regulatory or oversight responsibilities for these compacts. Slot machines were themselves authorized in Iowa at pari-mutuel racetracks in 1994, although video lottery machines capable of dispensing winnings were prohibited. In 2005, many new licenses were granted for new excursion gambling boat applications. Next up is the usually short statement about slot machine private ownership, which I have included in case you live in this U.S. state and are considering owning a slot machine. Here it is. It is legal to privately own a slot machine in Iowa if it is 25 years of age or older. The Iowa Racing and Gaming Commission was legislated into being by the Pari-Mutuel Wagering Act of May 1983. It is charged with the administration of this act, as well as the Exclusive Boat Gambling Act, the first legislation from any state to legalize riverboat casinos. The Iowa Racing and Gaming Commission states their mission as administer the laws and rules of pari-mutuel wagering and racetracks and gambling at excursion gambling boats, racetrack enclosures, gambling structures, to protect the public and to assure the integrity of licensed facilities and participants. In this next section, I'll discuss Iowa gambling establishments. The payback return percentages I'll be providing are annual statistics for all electronic gaming machines from mid-2015 through mid-2016 as provided by each casino to the state-run Iowa Racing and Gaming Commission. While I'll be providing these payback returns for each casino as I name it, remember that you can always visit my show notes for this episode on your podcast app or at professorslots.com/E19. In those show notes, I'll have both an easy-to-read transcript as well as a link to my Iowa Casino Slots article where you'll find these payback return percentages carefully and clearly listed. Here are the 22 gambling establishments in Iowa. 1. Ameristar Casino Hotel, Council Bluffs. Its payback percentage is 90.37%. 2. Blackbird Bend Casino in Ottawa. Its payback is not available due to it being a tribal casino. 3. Casino Queen Marquette. Its payback percentage is 90.04%. 4. Catfish Bend Casino at Pizzazz. This is in Burlington. Its payback is 91.09%. Number 5. Diamond Joe Casino, Dubuque. Its payback is 90.52%. 6. Diamond Joe Casino Worth in Northwood. Its payback is 90.40%. 7. Grand Falls Casino and Golf Resort in Larchwood. Its payback is 90.60%. 8. Hard Rock Hotel and Casino, Sioux City. Its payback is 90.21%. 9. Harris Casino and Hotel, Council Bluffs. Its payback percentage is 89.63%. 10. Horseshoe Casino, Council Bluffs. Its payback percentage is 89.31%. 11. Isle Casino Hotel, Bettendorf. Its payback percentage is 90.21%. 12. Isla Capri Casino Waterloo. Its payback percentage is 89.72%. 13. Lakeside Hotel Casino in Osceola. Its payback is 90.35%. 14. Meskwaki Bingo Casino Hotel in Tama. Its payback is not available due to it being a tribal casino. Number 15. Prairie Meadows Racetrack and Casino in Altoona. Its payback is 92.02%. Number 16. Q Casino in Dubuque. Its payback is 90.61% and 90.58%. Number 17. Rhythm City Casino Resort in Davenport. Its payback is 90.84%. Number 18. Riverside Casino and Gold Resort in Riverside. Its payback is 91.01%. Number 19. Wild Rose Casino in Jefferson. Its payback is 91.56%. Number 20. Wild Rose Casino and Resort, Clinton. Its payback is 90.84%. Number 21. Wild Rose Casino and Resort, Emmitsburg. Its payback is 91.35%. And number 22. Winnevegas Casino Resort in Sloan. Its payback is not available due to being a tribal casino. In summary, Iowa is at the forefront of the gambling industry with regards to legalized gaming, including Iowa slot machine casino gambling. It was the first state to legalize riverboat casinos, and its racinos, its pari-mutuel facilities, also offer slot machines. Iowa currently has 22 casinos and pari-mutuel facilities, having a current total of 20,792 slots and gaming machines, as well as 457 table games. These casinos include 3 American Indian tribal casinos having a state tribal compact, at which state gaming regulations do not apply and payback returns are not available. Remember to visit ProfessorSlots.com/subscribe to get my free report revealing the top 7 online resources for improving your gambling performance, including the one I've used as a top-tier slot machine casino gambler. If you'd like to provide a rating and review for this podcast, which may well help other slots enthusiasts decide to take a listen to one or more of my episodes, simply use your podcast app, visit ProfessorSlots.com/Apple Podcasts if you're an Apple device user, or visit ProfessorSlots.com/Android for Android users. Part 1 of the next episode of the Professor Slots podcast is What to Expect in 2018. I plan to focus on growing my audience of slots enthusiasts. I'll do this by providing great content through continuing my weekly podcasts and state-by-state slot machine casino gambling reviews. I'll also have new YouTube videos and be promoting Professor Slots on other podcasts and sites. Part 2 of the next episode of the Professor Slots podcast is another brief overview of the current state of gambling in a U.S. state, territory, or federal district. This time, I'll be talking to you about the great U.S. state of Kansas. That's the end of another great episode of the Professor Slots podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Show notes for this episode can be found within most podcast apps or at ProfessorSlots.com/E19. I plan to have the next episode come out very soon for you, where I'll have more amazing content for the show. Until the next episode, have fun, be safe, and make good choices. Bye.